A certain college professor always concluded his freshman introductory math lecture with a story about how math was fundamental to daily living. He said, "The husbandman sows so many bushels of wheat to a field. The lad figures exactly how many minutes are needed to keep him from being tardy to school. And the good wife cooks by measure and cuts the patterns of her patchwork by rule." She cuts the patterns by rule. Well, it's doubtful that the quilt maker applied any application of geometry. She may have used a wooden ruler and made one good square template out of a piece of cardboard, and then she traced it onto a piece of fabric and cut it out. And then to get the forepatch, she just carefully folded a square in half like this, made that cut, and then just folded it one more time for a second cut for her 4 squares. And then she took the second square for her triangle, just folded it once on the diagonal and cut right through there on the angle. Oh, just a snip or two, and the magic was done. Well, I'm so glad I have the rotary cutter and the ruler. Well, many of the old patterns were simply 4 patches and triangles. The most popular was Jacob's Ladder, made in 2 tones only. Now, depending on the place where the quilt maker lived and the time period, it could go by different names. Now, this quilt was made in the state of Kentucky or Ohio, and I'm going to call this one Underground Railroad. Now, can't you just see Eliza of Uncle Tom's Cabin crossing the ice from Kentucky to Ohio, just running and jumping her way to freedom? Well, this is just a great old scrap quilt. Now, I'm calling this one Stepping Stones. Now, doesn't a picture flash to your mind? Grass-embedded stepping stones set between lanes of flowers in an old colonial garden. Oh, this is just a wonderful one in a straight set in pastel colors. And we can't forget the tail of Benjamin's kite. Now, just imagine Benjamin Franklin, pompously dignified in a full-skirted coat and broad-brimmed hat, flying a child's kite in a thunderstorm. Well, quilt makers can hardly resist taking 2 simple pieces, turning them about, and bringing them to colorful life. But I do believe my favorite is the jewel box pattern, so let's finish our quilt. Someday one of your ancestors is going to open a chest and find this treasure. Ooh, the family jewels. We're ready to sew the 4 patch and the piece square together, and they are supposed to be identical in size. And ooh, thank heavens, these are both 4.5 inches. But put them in stacks, 2 stacks beside each other, and always make sure that the dark is turned so that it's pointing up in that direction on the piece square, and then on the 4 patch, always think of that dark making a diagonal line. You've got 2 diagonal lines, and if you get that focused, get that laid out, you'll get the whole block right. Now, take the 4 patch and flip it right sides together onto the piece square. And when you do that, it's best if the seam is vertical like this and also pointing towards this edge, if it's going in this direction. That way, it's going to be perfect later. But you know, if it's not pointing in that direction now, we'll just press it that way in just a little bit. Okay, I've got these 2 stacks all lined up. I have a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I actually am using my 1/4 inch foot on my sewing machine right here from the needle to the edge. It's a perfect 1/4 inch, and I have this little ridge right on there that's going to help keep that perfect 1/4. Okay, line that up, 15 stitches to the inch. Ooh, step on the gas, and your stiletto really helps you right now just to keep that seam laying flat. You can actually match up those opposite ends with it. Okay, pick up the next one, flip it right through. Now for each block that you are doing, you need to have 8 of these. Ooh, get that going through there. So I'm actually going to be making a 6 block wall hanging. So I need 8 times 6. Ooh, let's see, what's that math on there? Is that 48? Goodness, I need a calculator to do all of my figuring. So just go ahead, push these all through one after the other. And then as soon as you get them, oh, let me stop and get this lined up, matched. Hold that flat. After you've got them completely, assembly line sewn through, then you're going to press them. This step is important. Take them and drop them with the 4 patch on the top. And then once you have 4 patch on the top, set that seam right through there and then lift that up and over so that the seam is right behind the 4 patch. This is the most important part because we want to have seams that lock. Okay, so once you have them pressed over, turn from the opposite side and check because these seams, these 2 vertical seams, should be pointing in towards each other right now. Unfortunately, they are. Remember I said if it's not, just press it that way. But you want to have both of those seams pointing in. Okay, now I'm just going to go ahead, take these, cut them apart. We're going from pairs into quarters now. Oh, we don't want anything that's the same. So just go ahead and lay out 2 of these and now turn them. We want to make a chain going right down through with the 4 patch. Got that chain? Oop, that's looking pretty good. Well, why don't we just go ahead and stack up some. And as you stack, just make sure, actually, we could go ahead and instead of having 2 greens beside each other, we could go ahead, change them around, have a green and a purple. But you just want to keep on checking. Make sure that you don't have any of the fabrics, any of the colors the same next to each other. So now that they're together, bring them close. Let's see, get that lined up. Take this piece on the right, flip it to the left. And right now, the way the seams are going, you have seams in opposite directions, going down this way, going up this way. You're going to lock those. Just line them up and lock them. Hold them tight. And just assembly line sew these as well. Let me get that lined up right in the beginning. Get flat. Oh, please be the same size. That's the best part. Okay, step on the gas. Once you get it anchored, go over here. Line that up, roll it right into place, hold it flat with a stiletto. The way the block goes together, every single seam locks into each other. They nestle into each other. They don't wrestle. That's the best part. Okay, this is what I call a quarter. So I'm going to just take this, and at this point, you don't want to press it in either direction. A quarter, let me just get these out of the way, because we're going to take quarters and lay them out into one whole block. So take, and let's just see if we can make a different arrangement. Oh, those colors, see? Too much alike. Let's turn them. This is good. Different colors right here. I see with this piece, can have a purple. Oh, we are getting lucky here. Look, every single one. Different in the center, right in the middle. Not identical pieces along here. All right, so now let's just take this whole block and sew it together. Flip it right sides together, and then this seam right down here, oh, matches great, because when you look at this seam right here, with the 4 patch, they go in opposite directions, so they'll just lock right in place. Right here, you push the top seam up and the underneath seam down, so they'll just lock right in place. Ooh, it's perfect. Straight across here, and then right down here, once again, this top seam is up, the underneath seam is down, so they just work right in. And the 4 patch, opposite seams. It's just perfect. They go together so well. Okay, now this is the outside edge of the block. It is a 16-inch square. If you want to go ahead and backstitch right in the beginning, that's fine, just to hold the whole thing together. But once you get it anchored, then go ahead and go to that first seam, open it, look at it, and you just kind of roll it into place. And then just hold that flat together, or just use your stiletto as you sew across it. And right here with the thickness in the 4-patch, see in the piece square right here, you're going to roll those in and match them. And because there is a lot of thickness right here, you have to be careful that you maintain that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And actually, if you use that gray thread, it'll help you to see what you're stitching across. Now in the center, you just butt straight through from one into the next, line that up, and this one, the top seam up, bottom seam down. I always like to just roll that in there. Ooh, it's just like you want to hold your tongue just right so you can get that in place. Across it, and then there's only one more seam on it, and that also locks together. Pretty amazing. For the outside edge, and if you want to hold that together with some back stitching, go ahead and do it. Now, all I have to do is just flip this up. Oh my gosh, let's check it and see. See how those line up. Oh, looks pretty good right across there. Got a nice crisp point here. Now when you flip it and go across the opposite way, it's just the identical seams going up and down, locking together. The best thing is that when you're all finished and you press it from the wrong side, they lay completely flat. Ooh, it's looking good all around there. So get all of your blocks done. As soon as you get your blocks finished, then go ahead and sew your top together. I'm going to do 6 blocks, 2 by 3, and then add 2.5 inch strips for the framing border around all the outside edges. Long side spurs, fold them out, then framing border at top and bottom. As soon as I get my top sewn together, I'll show you those piano keys. We'll play right into those piano keys. They come from the second half of the medium or dark strip. Now when we started, we paired the background with that strip. Now this piece needs to be at least 21.5 inches. But when you do the piano keys, they don't need to be quite as long. You can get away with a 19.5 inch strip. So get those all cut, and all you're going to do is just take 2 of those and pair them right sides together. And when you do that, you always line up that straight edge at the top, and then the selvage edge at the opposite end doesn't need to meet. It can be any length. And then do a 1/4 inch seam down both sides of the strip. And then it's just like we worked on the 4-patch. All we're going to do is take the ruler and line up that 2 1/4 inch line right on the stitches. Oh, but we need a longer ruler this time. It's a nice long piece. So 2 1/4 inch line. All right, looking good. And just cut 1/2 right here. Then take the second strip and turn it around, line up that 2 1/4 inch line. Actually, these edges are so great. Whenever they're cut, you're sure that they match up. Okay, and you can just kind of push it and move it underneath so you always get them lined up. Now, you're going to be working with strips of piano keys. Take these right now. They're long, 19.5 inches. Lay them on the mat and always line them up on that grid, and just set the seam and then just lift them up and over. Look at the difference. That one is so much shorter than the other. That is what happens. You never know just what length your strip is going to be. Now take and place 4 pairs in a row. So let me just go ahead and take this one right here, always lining up that straight edge. Well, let's see. Maybe we could mix the colors up. That doesn't look too great. Let's do something like this. But place 4 pairs in a row. And this actually should be the same width as your 4-patch right there. 4 in a row, and then sew these all together. Now you might think that when you sew these together, how is this going to fit into your quilt? But it actually has a plan, because once you have them all sewn together, then this piece right here, when it's sewn together, needs to be the width of your block, and then it's all going to fit together. So sew them and press the seam in one direction and make sure that it's the width of your block. Ooh, if it's not the width of your block, you might need to do some sliver trimming along the edge. Now go ahead and take this piece and line it up on your grid and just take and sliver trim that edge right off. Let's see, got it on the straight line, sliver trim it. Make sure it's straight, and then these are cut into 6.5-inch sections. And actually this ruler is 6.5 inches, so it's going to work perfect. And out of one of these strips, you should be able to get 3 different sections. Let me see if I can just get one more for you, and then I'll go on and show you. All right, we've got the sections all together. Now, we want to get one for each side of the block around the outside edge of the quilt. Plus, we've got to work on those corners, those mitered corners. And this is how you get it. You set aside 4 of these sections and you unsew. And I am a great unsewer with my rotary cutter. And actually, I don't even get my fingers near the blade. All I'm doing is sectioning off 3 keys and unsewing them. If you just get a little pull and you just go ahead and drop your blade right against those stitches, you can quickly unsew them. Make sure your fingers are out of the way. So now these will go into the mitered corner, and this piece is to make up for the framing border. We have a framing border on each side, so we need to have 2 keys to accommodate that. So now let's take this piece, the mitered corner, and you're going to flip them right sides together and make sure that the seams are going in opposite directions. And they also should go ahead and interlock. Now once you have them work together, take your ruler and line it up corner to corner, right here, corner to corner, and take a pencil, piece of chalk, something that you can see a line drawn from. Let's see if I can make this dark enough for you to see. Whoops, would help if I had a pencil that didn't break. But you can see that white line going right along there. Well, we'll just take chances. I think you can see that. And then sew on that line. Line it up and make your needle go exactly on that line. Ooh, interlock those seams right there. Let's make sure. I think I'll just go ahead and lift that. Feel that, work that into place. You could put a pin there if you'd like. Stitch right across there. One right here. Now the larger quilts all use the 6.5-inch sections, but the smaller quilt, the wall hanging, actually only has just 4.5-inch sections. They're a little bit smaller. Okay. That's on the line. Now, whenever you open this, you can see this way, you've got one set of colors looking good. If you turn it the opposite way, you have other fabrics that are going to be accented. So you can go ahead, get this all laid out and play with it. Make sure you have a corner that you like, and then you're going to sew strips together. There's 2 blocks here. We'll be sewing 2 sets of 8. And then in addition, 1 of the 2 keys is going to go right here. And then on either end, you'll be putting in your piano keys. And you always line up the long strip with the long side. Well, let me just go ahead, get these whole long strips sewn together, and then I'll sew them right to the quilt. The gems are sparkling. The sapphire, the rubies, the emeralds, and the amethyst. Oh, it's just beautiful. Gosh, just love it. Now, I already did my layering. I have my backing on the bottom. I just used a muslin, and then I used 100% cotton batting next to that. And then on top of that comes the quilt top. Now, I already did my safety pinning, but you do need to make a decision on exactly how you're going to machine quilt before you pin. Now on this miniature, I'll show you. You could go ahead and just stitch in the chain right along like this. Put your needle in, follow right along there, and when you stitch in the chain, because you're going from color to color, you might want to use invisible thread. Then once you do the chain, go back and go around the 4 square right in the middle. Now this is pretty easy to do on a small quilt. It's easy to chain to do the 4 patch, but on a big quilt, You might want to do some grid quilting. It goes much easier. Now these are continuous diagonal lines, and you actually use, you always are in the background, and you use the straight line of the 4 patch to follow through to the next one. Because they're diagonal lines, then you don't have much turning with your quilt. It goes a lot quicker, and because it's in the background, you can just use thread that matches your background fabric. So decide first how you want to machine quilt it and then pin it. I'm going to do that diagonal machine quilting right down through, so I'm going to put all of my pins in the medium or the dark. I'm going to keep every pin out of the background. Just go ahead and use a quick clip and just drop your pin right against that and pin throughout the quilt. Now, I want to do a diagonal line from here to here. You always want to anchor your quilt. To help you out, take a corner and roll it right in there. I'm just going to do a short diagonal one to show you, and once you get it rolled, you can go ahead and use clamps like this just to wrap around there and hold it tight, because this is what has to go into the arm of your sewing machine. Okay, I have my walking foot all set up. Put in a long stitch. Ooh, it's a 3.0 stitch length, and I actually set it for a stitch that's going to anchor in the beginning and then go forward. It's great for machine quilting. Okay, position your hands like this on either side of it. Drop your foot, drop it, and watch. It's going to anchor, and then it's going to stitch forward. And I'm just going to stitch right alongside that dark square. Now when I get right here, ooh, I am in for it. It's eyeballing straight across that 4 patch. Keep it flat, go right through that middle. And you just keep on adjusting, moving your quilt. Keep that stitch length even. And I have my bobbin to match my backing color. Ooh, and just rearrange it and just keep on pushing it along there. Okay, once you go through here, now if you want to mark this, you could go ahead and use a Hera marker just to put a crease in, but works fine if you want to machine quilt it right through too. Now, right here, when you get to the end, I'm just going to go ahead and do a lock stitch. And then once it's locked, you could hold it in place. Now, all I need to do is just cut those threads. Whoa, where did my scissors go? Lost them. And do the opposite side. Keep on doing all of that diagonal ruling till you get the whole center machine quilted. And then you can go back out and do the framing border first here to the next one. And you know, actually, I've even done the piano keys, just going down every other one or so. But the last step is your binding. And it is a 3-inch wide strip that's been pressed in half. The wrong side is right in the inside. Let me just show you. Go ahead and start in the middle of one side and line it up. Line the raw edge up with the raw edge of your quilt. We've got extra out there. Ooh, I've got at least 2 inches extra. And then go ahead, same stitch length, and keep that lined up and stitch right down into the corner and stop exactly what your stitch length is, what your stitch width is. Okay, let's see. About needle down. I'm just going to raise my foot, turn it to the second side, and drop the presser foot again and just back stitch off. And stitch right off of that corner, and then raise the foot. And here, lift this up and turn it, fold it in a perfect miter. And actually, with the miter in the piano keys, it makes it even easier. Fold that on the diagonal, and then just go ahead, fold that back down like this, and then just continue sewing right around the quilt. Let me get a couple more stitches, and I'll show you how to line up that corner. All right, looking good. Now, right here, all you need to do is trim that right up to the edge of the quilt and take this corner right here, just turn it, flip that out like that. It's going to make a perfect miter there. Oh, that is looking good. Just from the wrong side, you're going to tuck that under, and pin that in place. From the right side, you can go ahead and stitch it down. This is going to look great when it's finished. Too many times we let projects go unfinished. Sounds like life itself. Knowing your quilt is finished is more precious than rubies. Well, the jewel tone fabrics in this quilt make it priceless. May this gem of a quilt become your family treasure.